For years, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel revolved around one man, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, also known as El Mencho. His power, his strategy, and his ruthless reputation were what held the entire empire together. But now that structure is starting to shake. With the cartel boss gone and his son serving a life sentence in the United States, the organization is facing a dangerous power vacuum. Several commanders are already circling, each one powerful enough to try and take control. And among them is a young rising figure whose influence has been growing quietly, but very quickly. So now a huge question is hanging over Mexico's underworld. Who will take the throne next? But before we get into that, we need to go back and understand how El Mencho built this empire in the first place. Back in 1966, in a dusty little town called Aguililla, a boy was born into the kind of environment that shapes hard men. His birth name was Ruben Oseguera Cervantes. The name Nemesio, the one that eventually turned into the street nickname Mencho, would come later. Exactly why he switched names is still a bit of a mystery. Some say it was to honor someone close to him. Others believe it was just another smart move to keep law enforcement guessing. But one thing about Michoacan is that it has never been an easy place to grow up. The region sits along Mexico's Pacific coast, full of rugged hills and tight-knit towns where people survive however they can. For decades, it's been known for one thing in particular: cannabis fields and opium poppies stretching deep into the countryside. For many young men there, the path into the drug world isn't some dramatic choice. It's just the air around them. Like a lot of teenagers from his hometown, Mencho eventually headed north, chasing opportunity. The destination was the United States, specifically the San Francisco Bay Area. And that's where he first stepped into the drug game for real. By the mid-1980s, he was already moving heroin. Not as some big boss yet, more like a young hustler learning the ropes. In 1986, police arrested him for carrying a loaded gun and possessing stolen property. His mugshot from that time shows a 19-year-old who looked nothing like the feared cartel leader he would become. Just a 5'8" kid wearing a blue hoodie, thick curly hair on his head, and a little baby fat still hanging on his face. At that point, nobody looking at that photo would have predicted what was coming. Somewhere along the way in California, Mencho crossed paths with a woman named Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia, better known in the narco world as La Jefa. The interesting part is that their story didn't actually start in the United States. Both of them grew up in the same hometown back in Michoacan, Aguililla, but they never really connected until they were young migrants trying to make their way in America. Eventually, they returned to Mexico and married in the late 1990s. And that marriage said a lot about Mencho's mindset, because Rosalinda didn't just come from any family. She came from what people in the underworld called narco royalty. Her brothers were part of a powerful trafficking clan known as Los Queenies, an organization with deep connections and serious money flowing through the Mexican drug trade. By marrying Rosalinda, Mencho wasn't just starting a family. He was locking himself into one of the most influential criminal networks in the country. In the cartel world, marriages often work like royal alliances in old kingdoms. It's not just about love, it's about power and connections. Around this time, their son was born in San Francisco in 1990. His name was Ruben Oseguera Gonzalez, later known as El Menchito. But Mencho's time in America didn't exactly turn into a quiet family life. He was arrested again for heroin trafficking and ended up spending about 3 years behind bars. After finishing his sentence, U.S. authorities deported him back to Mexico, and that's where his story takes one of its strangest turns. Instead of jumping straight back into the drug trade, Mencho joined the Jalisco State Police. On the surface, it sounded like a man trying to go legit, but in the world he came from, things are rarely that simple. Narcos have been known to slip into law enforcement before, not to fight crime, but to understand how the system works from the inside. He didn't wear the badge for long. Before long, he walked away from the uniform and went back to the streets, linking up with local gangs before eventually landing inside the Mencho cartel. Years later, someone who actually knew him back then would describe a completely different version of the man. A cocaine pilot named Fernando Blengio remembered Mencho from the mid-2000s. Back then, he didn't even go by Mencho. People just called him Ruben. Blengio recalled doing business with him once, trading a few kilos of cocaine for a small plane, a Cessna 210. To celebrate the deal, Mencho hosted a dinner for everyone involved. Blengio remembered him being friendly, respectful, and surprisingly warm. The guy laughing and serving food at that dinner didn't look like the ruthless warlord people would later fear. According to Blengio, the transformation came later, and it came fast. Mencho's climb to the top wasn't about luck. It was about calculated moves. In 2009, he made one of the boldest plays of his career. He betrayed his own boss inside the Mencho cartel to gain favor with Ignacio Coronel Villarreal, a major figure within the powerful Sinaloa cartel. Nacho Coronel was known as the King of Crystal because of the massive methamphetamine operations he ran. Mencho proved useful, loyal, and ruthless enough to climb quickly within that network, but the whole game changed in 2010. Mexican authorities killed Nacho Coronel, and shortly afterward, another Mencho leader known as El Lobo was captured. Suddenly, there was a massive power vacuum. The cartel split apart into rival factions fighting for control. The two biggest groups that emerged were Los Torcidos and La Resistencia. What followed was a brutal war across western Mexico. Shootouts, betrayals, shifting alliances. It was chaos. When the dust settled, Los Torcidos came out on top. They eventually rebranded themselves into a new organization that would become one of the most powerful cartels in the world, Jalisco New Generation Cartel. And sitting at the top of that new empire was El Mencho. The way CJNG operated was different from traditional cartels. Instead of running everything like a rigid military chain of command, they built something closer to a franchise system. Regional factions operated like local branches, partnering with smaller criminal groups to run drug production, trafficking routes, extortion rings, and even fuel theft. That model allowed them to spread like wildfire across Mexico. Before long, they had influence, not just in the streets, but inside politics, police departments, courtrooms, and legitimate businesses. Around this time, people who knew Mencho began noticing a serious shift in his personality. The friendly hustler from the old days was gone. In his place was someone far more aggressive. A Chicago cocaine trafficker named Margarito Flores remembered doing business with him and immediately sensing something different. During one heated argument over a deal, Flores realized Mencho wasn't someone he wanted to cross. The attitude was already there, a chip on the shoulder and a hunger to dominate the business. That reputation only grew stronger. Then in September 2011, Mencho made a move that shocked the entire country. Right around 5 in the evening, 6 vans suddenly blocked traffic along a busy highway in Boca del Rio, a popular tourist destination. Drivers were forced to stop as the vans pulled to a halt. The cargo doors swung open, and one by one, the bodies began hitting the pavement. 35 victims were dumped right there on the road in broad daylight. Authorities said the dead were members of Los Zetas, a notoriously violent cartel made up of former elite soldiers. The message was loud and brutal. From that moment on, Mencho's group started being called the Zeta Killers. Now, the alliance with the Sinaloa cartel was never built to last. Once Ignacio Coronel Villarreal was killed during a police raid, the entire situation started unraveling. Inside the criminal world, suspicion spreads fast, And once again, fingers started pointing toward Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes. People whispered that he had betrayed another boss to climb higher. Whether the rumors were true or not almost didn't matter. What stuck was the reputation. By that point, Mencho was already being seen as a cold strategist, someone who moved quietly, calculated every step, and stayed far away from the flashy lifestyle that had gotten so many other drug lords captured or killed. While other traffickers were showing off luxury cars, mansions, and stacks of cash, Mencho stayed deep in the shadows. No interviews, no spotlight, no unnecessary attention. In his mind, the moment a narco starts showing off is the moment the clock starts ticking on his downfall. Behind that low profile, though, something massive was being built. Mencho wasn't trying to run a small cartel. He was building a global machine, and a big part of that machine came from his wife's side of the family. Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia came from the powerful Valencia clan, a group often referred to as Los Queens. These weren't street-level operators. They were business-minded, organized, and incredibly skilled when it came to moving money. One former Mexican federal investigator even described them as the most sophisticated money launderers in the world. Their operation didn't just clean Mencho's money. They moved billions for multiple criminal groups, creating a financial web that stretched across continents, from China to the Middle East, including places like Dubai. While the money flowed through international channels, the power on the ground was expanding fast. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel began spreading across Mexico by treating smaller gangs like franchise partners. Instead of controlling every operation directly, the cartel allowed regional crews to run their own territories while still answering to the larger organization. Towns, neighborhoods, and entire regions slowly fell under their influence. Investigators later got a rare glimpse into how deep that system really went after seizing a cell phone from a local cartel boss. Inside that phone was essentially a full payroll list. There were payments for hitmen, lookouts stationed throughout cities, expensive lawyers ready to handle arrests, and even local police officers who were kept quiet through steady bribes. But Mencho understood that power isn't only about fear. Sometimes it's about image. Those same seized phones contained videos showing cartel members handing out gifts to children during the Three Kings Day. The gifts were presented as being courtesy of Mencho himself. It was a carefully designed message meant to portray him as a kind of neighborhood protector, a powerful figure who looked after the people in areas where the government often failed. According to investigators, Mencho's biggest strength wasn't just brutality, it was patience and timing. For years, Mexican authorities were focused on hunting down the biggest names in organized crime. Groups like the Los Zetas and the Knights Templar cartel were dominating headlines and drawing the full attention of the government. While the spotlight was aimed at those targets, Mencho's organization quietly moved into the empty spaces left behind. Territory after territory began falling under CJNG control. He studied the cartels that came before him almost like a student studying a playbook. From the older Pacific Coast traffickers, he learned how to negotiate deals and build alliances with powerful political figures. From Los Zetas, he absorbed a much darker lesson: the effectiveness of extreme violence as a tool for intimidation. And from other groups operating around his home state of Michoacan, he saw the power of propaganda and the huge profits waiting in synthetic drugs, especially methamphetamine. By the time authorities fully realized what was happening, Mencho had combined all of those tactics into something new, a more flexible, more aggressive cartel structure that could spread faster than the old organizations ever could.
Delta 1.
Hey, ¿quién habla?
Mira bien, hijo de tu puta madre. Soy Mencho, güey. Relaja tu puta gente a la verga. Soy Mencho, güey. Relaja tus putas partidas. Si no, te voy a partir tu madre y toda tu bola de perros. Te tengo identificado 30 güeyes. Hasta tus putos perros te voy a matar si no te relajas, güey. ¿Cómo ves?
Ya está, señor, ahorita los bajo.
Oh, no cuelgues, hijo de la verga, te tengo ubicado en Chacala, güey.
No le estoy colgando, le estoy diciendo, ahorita los bajo.
Póngase bien las pilas, güey. ¿Qué se le cuesta ser amigo, cabrón? ¿Uno no se mete con ustedes para que se pasen de verga?
No, señor, ahorita yo se las bajo.
Pongan, mire, revíremeles a todos los hijos de su puta madre, porque todos agarran dinero y son buenos de puercos.
Sí, es lo que me están diciendo.
¿Se me ponen a tiros o tú eres el primero que vas a marchar por ellos, León?
No, señor.
By 2015, many analysts were already comparing Mencho to the most famous cartel leader of the previous generation, Joaquin Guzman, and the CJNG quickly proved it was capable of fighting the government head-on. That same year, after Mexican soldiers killed one of the cartel's members, the organization launched a deadly retaliation against a military convoy. 15 officers were killed in the ambush. Soon after, the state of Jalisco descended into chaos as the cartel set up dozens of narco blockades using burning vehicles to shut down highways and major roads. In one of the most shocking moments of that conflict, cartel fighters even used a rocket-propelled grenade to bring down a Mexican army helicopter. The human cost of those years has been staggering. Over roughly 15 years of cartel dominance in the region, forensic teams have uncovered clandestine mass graves containing the remains of more than 2,000 victims. Even the justice system became a target. In 2020, after Mencho's son, Ruben Oseguera Gonzalez, was extradited to the United States, the judge involved in the case was later assassinated inside his own home in the state of Colima. Later that same year, another high-profile killing shocked the country. Former Aristoteles Sandoval was shot and killed inside a bar bathroom in the resort city of Puerto Vallarta. Then came one of the boldest attacks ever carried out against a government official. In June 2020, the police chief of Mexico City, Omar Garcia Harfuch, was driving through the wealthy neighborhood of Lomas de Chapultepec when a group of around 28 gunmen suddenly blocked the road. For nearly 4 minutes, the attackers unleashed a storm of gunfire, firing more than 100 rounds from military rifles. Harfuch survived the assassination attempt, but the message from CJNG was impossible to ignore. A cartel had just launched a full-scale attack in the political heart of the country. Now, like many powerful crime bosses, Mencho eventually became surrounded by rumors and myths. For years, there had been claims that he suffered from a serious kidney illness. Some believed this health issue explained why he rarely appeared in public and stayed hidden in remote mountain areas between Michoacan and Jalisco. Stories circulated that somewhere deep in that rugged territory, he had built a private medical facility where he received treatment in complete isolation. Because of how rarely he appears, rumors about his death spread regularly. In 2022, reports flooded Mexican media claiming he had been killed during a major gun battle between rival criminal groups. Around the same time, threatening messages appeared across the city of Guadalajara, suggesting that he hadn't died in a shootout at all, but from kidney failure. The uncertainty even began creating fractures within the cartel itself. One splinter group in Colima, known as the Mezcales, eventually broke ties with CJNG because they believed Mencho had already died. Despite all the speculation, investigators never confirmed those rumors. As far as authorities were concerned, the man remained alive and one of the most wanted criminals in the world. After years of slipping through the fingers of law enforcement, El Mencho finally started running out of places to hide. Investigators had been playing a long game of patience, slowly tightening the net around him. According to Mexico's defense leadership, the breakthrough came when authorities began tracking a woman believed to be closely connected to him. That trail eventually led them toward the quiet mountain town of Tapalpa. Things escalated quickly in February 2026. By February 20th, intelligence units had picked up fresh information from someone connected to one of Mencho's partners. The tip suggested he was hiding in a secluded compound deep in the hills. The government wasn't about to risk losing him again, so they launched a full-scale operation. This wasn't a small police raid. The plan involved elite Mexican special forces, units from the National Guard, military aircraft, and helicopters sealing off the entire area. By the early hours of February 22nd, the mountains outside Guadalajara were surrounded. The location itself was built for secrecy, tucked along a steep hillside with several luxury cabins hidden between thick pine forests. From that vantage point, anyone approaching by land could be spotted from miles away. There was only one dirt road leading up the mountain. To avoid tipping off the guards, the commandos ignored the road entirely. Instead, helicopters carried the troops directly over the compound while surveillance drones monitored the entire scene from above. The moment the soldiers moved in, gunfire erupted. Cartel gunmen guarding the property opened fire almost instantly, turning the quiet mountain retreat into a battlefield. But the special forces kept pushing forward, cutting through the resistance, while several members of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel were killed in the fighting. As the raid intensified, Mencho and a small group of loyal bodyguards tried to retreat deeper into the wooded cabins scattered across the hillside. That's where the second gunfight broke out. By the time the smoke settled, soldiers discovered Mencho wounded and surrounded by two of his closest guards. They quickly secured him and rushed him into a military helicopter for emergency evacuation, but the flight never made it to the hospital. According to officials, he died while being transported through the air. The operation itself wasn't just a Mexican effort. Later reports suggested a US-backed intelligence task force had played a major role in tracking cartel leadership and providing critical surveillance support. But the moment the news spread, the cartel responded the only way it knew how: violence. Authorities quickly identified the man organizing the retaliation. His name was El Tuli, one of Mencho's closest allies and a key financial operator within the organization. Determined to avenge the raid, he unleashed chaos across the state of Jalisco. Roads were blocked with burning vehicles. Government buildings were attacked. Armed groups began spreading across cities and highways, turning large areas into temporary war zones. In one particularly chilling move, El Tuli even placed a bounty on Mexican soldiers, offering 20,000 pesos for every member of the military killed. But his campaign didn't last long. Later that same day, security forces tracked him down in the town of El Grulo, about 180 kilometers from Guadalajara. When officers tried to arrest him, he opened fire while attempting to escape. The confrontation ended with El Tuli being killed in the shootout. Even with his death, the damage had already spread. Across several Mexican states, cartel members set vehicles on fire and blocked highways in coordinated retaliation. The epicenter of the chaos was Guadalajara, the capital of Jalisco and one of the country's largest cities. Normally buzzing with activity, the city suddenly felt frozen. Residents stayed inside their homes while streets emptied. Businesses shut down. The atmosphere felt more like a city under siege than a major metropolitan hub. The timing couldn't have been worse either, considering the city was preparing to host international matches connected to the 2026 FIFA World Cup later that year. The unrest even forced the postponement of several professional football matches scheduled that weekend. The violence stretched all the way to the Pacific coast as well. In the tourist destination of Puerto Vallarta, dark plumes of smoke rose over the skyline as vehicles burned and blockades formed. Images flooding social media showed frightened passengers running through Guadalajara's airport while smoke drifted above beach resorts along the coast. Airlines began canceling flights as the situation spiraled. The governor of Jalisco, Pablo Lemus Navarro, urged residents to stay off the streets. Public transportation was suspended and schools across several regions were temporarily closed. Even the United States Embassy in Mexico issued a security alert, warning American citizens in states including Tamaulipas, Michoacan, Guerrero, Nuevo León, and Jalisco to remain indoors. By the following day, the toll from the chaos was becoming clearer. Authorities reported at least 30 suspected cartel fighters killed, along with 25 members of the National Guard and 1 civilian. Security forces also arrested more than 70 people across 7 different states connected to the violence. In a single day alone, officials recorded at least 85 cartel-related roadblocks. The death of El Mencho was a massive blow to organized crime in Mexico. For years, he had been considered one of the most powerful and feared crime bosses in the country. But analysts also pointed out a familiar problem. For decades, the Mexican government has used a strategy known as removing the head of the snake, targeting cartel leaders and eliminating them. While it sometimes weakens organizations, it often creates something equally dangerous: a power vacuum. When a kingpin disappears, the power vacuum rarely stays empty for long. Inside the cartel, different factions almost always start circling, each one trying to claim the throne. Because the organization operates through semi-independent groups scattered across the country, the risk of infighting becomes very real. Multiple leaders could start pushing for control at the same time, and that's where things can turn chaotic. Right now, the biggest question hanging over everything is simple: who takes over next? Mencho's son, Ruben Oseguera Gonzalez, had once been considered the heir to the empire, but he is currently serving a life sentence in the United States, leaving the leadership picture wide open. One potential candidate is his stepson, Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez. His family connections make him a logical figure to step into a major role. His mother, Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia, played a central role in the Valencia family network, responsible for laundering money for the cartel before she was arrested. But the CJNG is far bigger than just one family. Several powerful regional commanders already control major pieces of the organization. One of them is Aldias Flores Silva, a key operator believed to have helped broker alliances with factions linked to the sons of Joaquin Guzman. Another major figure is Ricardo Ruiz Velasco, a high-level enforcer who leads elite armed units within the cartel's home territory in Jalisco. Then there are the financial and logistical power players. Heraclio Guerrero Martinez has reportedly overseen large portions of the cartel's stolen fuel business. Over the years, the CJNG has become deeply involved in the illegal fuel trade, known locally as huachicol, moving massive quantities across Mexico and even into the United States. Another key figure is Gonzalo Mendoza Gaitan, the strategist responsible for managing supply chains that bring chemical precursors from China into Mexico for the production of methamphetamine and fentanyl. Some reports suggested El Sapo may have been killed during the same operation that targeted Mencho, though that information has not been fully confirmed. If that turns out to be true, it would leave an even larger leadership gap. One rising name that observers are watching closely is Abraham Jesus Ambris Cano. At just 29 years old, Abraham Jesus Ambris Cano has already built a reputation as one of the cartel's most aggressive regional operators. He was born on March 16, 1997 in Apatzingan, a city right in the heart of the troubled Tierra Caliente region. That part of Michoacan has long been a battleground between rival criminal groups, and for many young men growing up there, the line between survival and crime often gets blurred early. Ambris Cano's path into the underworld started with a group called Los Viagras, a powerful faction that once formed part of Carteles Unidos. That alliance was created for one clear purpose: to push back against the expanding influence of the CJNG across Michoacan. Back then, he ran with several local heavyweights, including Luis Barragan Chavez, a well-known figure tied to the Los Reyes criminal network. But sometime in his early 20s, Hombres Cano made a move that stunned people on both sides of the conflict. Instead of continuing the fight against the CJNG, he switched sides entirely and pledged loyalty to Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes. It was a risky decision that could have easily gotten him killed. Turning on former allies in the cartel world is rarely forgiven, but the gamble paid off. By joining the CJNG, he suddenly found himself connected to one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the world. The move gave him access to the cartel's deep financial resources, its expanding territorial network, and its heavily armed enforcement units. From that moment on, the man known as El Yogurt started climbing fast. Security reports suggest his rise wasn't just about loyalty or violence. What really separated him from other young commanders was his talent for logistics. He showed a sharp ability to organize trafficking corridors and reinforce routes used to move drugs north toward the United States. Because of that skill, cartel leadership began trusting him with some of the most strategic territory in Mexico. His responsibilities reportedly included coordinating operations across states like Jalisco and Colima, while also maintaining influence in Quintana Roo. At the same time, he controlled rugged mountainous areas along the border where Michoacan and Jalisco meet, regions that serve as key corridors for drug trafficking. Inside the CJNG structure, El Yogurt is believed to command a specialized armed unit connected to the cartel's elite wing known as the Mencho Special Forces. His faction has been referred to by several names, including Operativa Yogurt and Los Yogures. Under his command are fighters who operate more like a paramilitary force than a traditional street gang. The group is known for using high-power weapons, armored vehicles, and tactical gear normally associated with military units. Because of that firepower, Mexican authorities have labeled him one of the main generators of violence across the Sierra Coast region of Michoacan. But the composition of his forces makes the situation even more concerning. Federal intelligence reports suggest that the CJNG has been recruiting beyond Mexico's borders, targeting former soldiers from countries across Latin America. In particular, ex-military personnel from Colombia, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador have reportedly been brought in to strengthen cartel units. Within Hombres Cano's network, several fighters are believed to be former Colombian and Guatemalan soldiers. These recruits bring experience in battlefield tactics, weapons handling, and operational planning, skills that dramatically raise the combat capability of cartel units. All of that came into focus during a major confrontation on May 18, 2025. That day, Mexican Navy forces launched a large-scale operation targeting a CJNG cell operating in the remote community of Huitzantla. The town sits deep in the coastal mountains of Michoacan, a region known for being difficult to access and easy to defend. The operation involved Navy Special Forces working alongside federal security authorities in a coordinated strike by land and air. What followed was a fierce battle. By the time the gunfire stopped, 12 cartel gunmen had been killed and 9 others were arrested. 3 Mexican Marines were wounded during the clash. The operation had one primary target, Abraham Jesus Hombres Cano. Despite the nickname that might sound harmless, El Yogurt had already established himself as a major CJNG figure. His territory covered the border zone where Michoacan, Jalisco, and Colima meet, an area considered extremely valuable to cartels because it connects several trafficking routes used to move chemical precursors and synthetic drugs such as methamphetamine and fentanyl. The group protecting him during that operation called itself Los Indestructibles. According to intelligence reports, the unit consisted of a mix of Mexican cartel members and foreign fighters with military backgrounds, particularly former Colombian soldiers. Their training in combat tactics and weapons likely explains why the Navy needed such a large and heavily equipped force to confront them. Investigators later revealed that the conflict in that region was tied to a broader strategic alliance. The CJNG had reportedly formed an operational partnership with the Gulf Cartel. The goal of that alliance was simple: gain control of key smuggling routes leading toward the United States border. One of the figures believed to have helped create that alliance was Cesar Morfin, a leader within the Los Metros faction of the Gulf Cartel. Through that partnership, CJNG forces gained a foothold in areas of northern Tamaulipas. After taking heavy losses during the Navy raid, Hombres Cano's forces pulled back deeper into their territory, but instead of abandoning the region, they began turning it into a defensive stronghold. Security reports later indicated that explosive devices had been planted along access roads leading into nearby indigenous communities, effectively transforming the area into a fortified zone. During the same operation, authorities encountered another unexpected challenge. Residents from surrounding communities, including men, women, and even children, gathered along the roads attempting to block the military's entry. Investigators believe this reflects the cartel's strong local influence, where some communities have developed social ties or economic dependence on the group. Once security forces secured the area, they discovered a massive cache of equipment. The haul included improvised explosive devices, heavy firearms, tactical gear, and uniforms. Among the seized items were berets labeled Fuerzas Especiales Mencho Operativa Yogurt, suggesting a formal identity for the unit connected to Hombres Cano. Despite the scale of the operation and the losses suffered by his fighters, El Yogurt managed to escape. He disappeared into the surrounding mountains with a small group of loyal men, slipping away before authorities could close the final gap. Ironically, surviving such a large military operation may have strengthened his reputation inside the cartel. Instead of weakening his influence, it reinforced the image of a commander capable of surviving major assaults and rebuilding his forces afterward. Even after the raid, he reportedly maintained control over the strategic corridor linking Michoacan, Jalisco, and Colima, one of the most valuable regions in Mexico for drug production, transportation, and territorial influence. Recent intelligence reports have also documented foreign ex-military fighters participating in clashes across Michoacan, confirming that these cartel units are increasingly relying on international combat experience to strengthen their operations. For now, the leadership structure at the top of the CJNG remains uncertain. There has been no official announcement or clear declaration of who holds ultimate authority. But within security circles and intelligence reports, one name continues appearing more frequently as a rising power inside the organization. And that name is Abraham Jesus Hombres Cano.
Comandantes, apoyo en la 408, carretera La Barca, Ocotlán, en la pista.
Allá, güey, se me taparon la caseta de aquí de Ocotlán, güey.
Nos están agrediendo. Mi teniente coronel, necesitamos apoyo. Solicitamos apoyo. ¡Apoyo! ¡Nos agredieron! Apoyo, nos están agrediendo. Nos están agrediendo acá. Apoyo.